The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's a privilege and a pleasure to have you join us today for today's webinar. Today, our topic is tackle your biggest lead conversion challenges to revenue growth. Last month, we talked about how to tackle your biggest marketing challenges to revenue growth. This month, we're going to talk about lead conversion, and next month, we're going to talk about sales. So it's really this entire process of lead creation that needs to happen, to going from leads to from marketing perspective. And now this month, it's how do you convert those leads into sales opportunities. And next month, it's going to be how do you convert those sales opportunities into customers and revenue. So it's a process, and we broke it down by design into this unique three-part series. And so if you missed any part, we're going to record these, each of these different webinars, and we'll be happy to serve those recordings to you. And they're available anytime to share, to revisit as you move forward. So thank you again for joining us today. And really revenue growth is the oxygen for every company. And we've worked with hundreds of B2B companies to help them implement these revenue growth best practices so that they too can achieve predictable and profitable revenue growth. So we're going to share with you some really key takeaways from today. This area of lead conversion is probably one of the most overlooked areas in terms of the revenue growth model. And so we want to share with you some really unique insight and best practices that you can start looking to apply today. So again, thank you for joining us. And throughout today's webinar, please go ahead and take time and post questions that you have to our chat or questions that you have here. And post the questions you have. We'll make sure that we address those questions in our Q&A session today. And if we have too many questions, which sometimes we do, because we have great attendance for these webinars, then what we'll do is make sure that I address them offline with you one-on-one. Okay? So tackle those big challenges. If we can do that, we can put you into the driver's seat. What I'd like to do right now is start off with a poll. I love to keep these webinars interactive. And let me go ahead and launch this poll for you to participate. Love to get your opinion about this question. So when you think about lead conversion, what are the issues you have today? Let's say you have, from our last webinar, let's say you're getting 50 or 100 leads per month that you're creating, which is not unusual. What's the challenge now you have as far as converting those leads? Is it that you're unable to reach the leads once they're created? Your sales team or your BDRs are having difficulty reaching their leads? Is it that the sales team complains that the quality isn't there that they're looking for? So you've got the quantity, but not the quality. Is it that you need better offers to convert those leads to the next stage in the sales process? Is it that you need a better way to sell value in ROI? Or is it that you don't have the resources to follow up on those leads? So this is a select all that applies. So please go ahead and take a few moments and talk to yourself and say, well, what are the ones that we have as a company that are challenges in this area? And as we go through today's webinar, I'll make sure that I spend time particularly addressing your top challenges as we go through this process. Okay, I'll keep the poll open for just a little bit longer, and then we'll close the poll and show the results. Perfect. We've got some good responses here. Thank you very much. Let me close the poll and show the results to our audience. Okay, we got some pretty interesting percentages here. So 20% stated that you have difficulty reaching your audience to qualify these leads. Another 20% of our audience stated that the sales team complains about the quality of the leads. That's not unusual. We want to talk about that. 40% stated that you need better offers to convert these leads to the next stage in the sales process. Another 20% stated that you need a better way to sell value and ROI. And the top go-getter is that you don't have the resources for follow-up. So let's talk about this last one, because this last one is very interesting. When we work with companies, if we work with Google, which we have in this area, or we work with large companies and we work with small companies and mid-sized companies, what we found is in many cases, they were not equipped, they didn't have the resources to handle the tsunami of new leads that are created when you put in a revenue growth, revenue acceleration engine, as we talked in the last webinar. So we're going to talk about options you have, because you need to have dedicated resources that are going to follow up on the leads. Otherwise, that's money not well spent, because it's a major investment in marketing to build the campaigns, build the offers, engage the audience, and then when those leads do appear, they need to be followed up on a timely basis. So it's a major issue that most people have. Okay, let's move on. So today we're in the middle here. We're talking about lead development of all these marketing leads that you have today, and what to do with that, and best practices you could apply. Next month, we're going to talk about top sales challenges that you have to revenue growth. So you've got marketing, you've got lead development, and you've got sales. And lead development is typically that handoff, that the baton that's being handed off between marketing and sales. And in many cases, this is the area where we don't get the conversions. So please join us for the entire series. If you missed out on anything, then go ahead and send me an email, and we'll make sure that we can provide you with the recordings of all three if you're not able to attend. Last time when we talked about marketing, we talked about some of these best practices. So one of the best practices we talked about is putting in place your revenue acceleration engine. And it is a recipe to put that in place. That's one thing that we're really good is we've got fantastic recipes. So the recipe basically is, how do you put that in place? We call it a revenue acceleration engine. That's creating the right quantity and quality of marketing qualified leads. And we're going to give you some examples of customers that are doing that today with us. The next thing we talked about is implementing that engine with your target audience in industries that you're going from and to. And then the third area we talked about is best ways to accomplish the upfront education and preference setting that you have, specifically through a sales-driven website. And I can't really say more than this in terms of the digital experience that you provide to your audience. Very first thing they're going to do when they hear about you or your company or your solutions is go to your website. That's the moment of truth to actually accelerate that experience for your buyer and for your sales team. We talked about understanding your audience and validating the assumptions. It's interesting because before today's webinar, we talked with a client of ours, and they are selling their solutions into the franchise market. And so we've done a market survey for them with all their key stakeholders and buyers, and just amazing insights that we found about the franchise industry and their decision makers to really help validate and to provide the direction that they need for their messaging, positioning, and offers. And then finally, we talked about one of the things that's important and differentiated from our perspective when we talk with you is when you create marketing offers, they should also be sales tools. So we have a unique way of thinking about this. We think about the buyer's journey and what are the sales tools that you're going to need to help that buyer throughout the entire buyer's journey, and then how do those become marketing offers? If we do that, we serve multiple purposes when you create sales tools, because now you can start using them in marketing, you can use them in sales, you can use them with your partners. And so it's multifaceted. It's not just creating demand, top of funnel demand. It's creating the tools and the top of funnel demand you're going to need for top of funnel, middle funnel, and bottom of funnel. So we believe that every company, each of you today that are attending today's webinar, need a revenue acceleration partner such as On-Demand Advisors. And we're going to bring together for you serial practices, best practices in terms of how to do this. So we do everything that you see on here today, and they're all important. But one of the things I would just draw your attention to is number 5. When we talk about sizing the engine, the revenue acceleration engine, we work with companies that are entrepreneurial, that are just getting started. We work with companies that are in the growth stage of scaling. We work with companies that have scaled and really are looking at even being large public companies. And we work with public companies. So we work with all companies of all sizes. The best practices we're talking about today will apply to your company regardless of the size. So let's share with you the revenue acceleration system. The reason why we're doing 3 webinars in this series is because down below in this area called revenue engineering, we have 3 funnels. Last month, we talked about how do you build the leads that you're going to need for this first funnel. Whether it's 50 leads you need a month or 1,000 leads that you need per month, there's a way to do that. There's a way to engineer the outcome that you have. But the question is, once you get those 50 or 100 or 1,000 leads per month, how do you convert them? How do you convert them into sales opportunities? That's the second funnel that we have here today. And we're going to spend some time really going through that with you today and best practices to accelerate that process. And then the third funnel is your sales funnel. And we're going to be talking about that next month. So if you think about the first funnel is all about interest. Your target audience has expressed overt interest in your products, solutions, and services. The second funnel, today's funnel, we're going to talk about is trust. How do you share that trust, gain that trust with your prospect, with your buyer, and then how do you help them through this process so that they want to go through an evaluate the fit of your solution or service with their organization, and then become a customer. And then the fourth funnel over here would be realization. So that's where your services team, that's where your group that's involved in customer success is really responsible for helping achieve the realization of benefits, ROI, and outcomes that you promised during the engagement process. Okay. So again, here's the example of the 3 funnels. When we sit down with you as an individual company, we actually put these funnels together. These funnels, by the way, can be done horizontally. They can be done by vertical. So when we work with ICUC, we help them look at 12 different verticals, and we engineered the outcomes for those 12 different verticals. And if we look at some companies, we're going to also do not only selling direct funnels, but indirect funnels. So working through partners, selling through partners. How do you drive revenue through those partners? And so this is just some really revenue engineering funnel math that we go through with you. But again, last month was about creating the 750 market qualified leads you need each month or each year. And then this is the lead development that we're talking about today. And then next month, we're going to talk about the sales funnel and how do you graduate those. And how do you do all this with not only best practices, but also with velocity? So a factoid for all of you in the B2B space is that 95% of the market qualified leads that are generated today are not sales ready. What does that mean? It means that to get the flywheel going for your business, you've got to create these market qualified leads. But if you do a good job qualifying these leads against typical criteria, such as, I'll just use BANT as an example. Do they have budget? Do you have access to the right people? Do they have a hard driving defined need for your service or solution? And do you have a timeline, short timeline to evaluate within? And there's other criteria that typically are involved in this process. The answer typically is no. But that's why we talked about lead development. Lead development is really something new that we're talking about in the industry. And that is not just lead qualification, but lead development. We have a view here at On Demand Advisors that in your target market, every company that's in your defined market should be your customer. If not now, tomorrow, the next day. So the process here is about developing that lead into a sales opportunity. Okay, hope that's helpful to everybody today. So let's talk about the major challenges that all of you and most of you face today. And we talked about this in some of these in the survey that are the poll question we just went over today. Unable to reach the leads. So when you have a bucket of leads, let's say it's 50 leads that you developed, then it's important to reach those leads quickly. We're going to talk about a process that we help companies put in to actually reach and engage those leads. Number two is something that's important because if you don't have the resources to follow up on leads, you need the resources. We're going to talk about 3 options today that you have to address that. We're going to talk about high quality. How do you create high quality leads? So a lead is not a lead is not a lead. We're going to talk about how do you educate those leads, preference those leads, and provide those leads with not only self diagnostics, but also making sure that they're the right lead for you. And then converting those leads through each stage of the buyer's process or buyer's journey, and having a definitive plan to convert this. So we're going to talk about all of these areas today. Here's the lead conversion process as we mapped it out. On the left-hand side is the market qualified leads that were generated from your revenue acceleration engine that we talked about last month. Let's say that's a bucket of 50 or 100 leads that you have. We've got to reach those leads, we've got to qualify those leads, and we have to develop those leads. And if we do that well, we're going to convert those leads into sales qualified leads or sales opportunities. Really important here in terms of having this process down. And I came up through sales myself, and I built some tremendous sales organizations. And one thing we were very good at doing was qualifying. What we really weren't good at doing, I don't think at the time, was lead development. If somebody didn't meet our qualification criteria, we would just basically move on. Today, I think the key word is development. So let's talk about how you do this. If you're unable to reach the leads, if that's one of the challenges you have, it's really important to think about this because we found that as we put the revenue acceleration engine in place with many companies and start scaling that, we find that in many cases the sales team isn't available or ready to actually follow up on those leads. One reason is that it may be a lower priority that they have to follow up on the leads than working on some qualified sales opportunities that they already have in their funnel. Another reason may be that they get compensated when they close business as opposed to working on the early stage of business. Something I do find very often is that they usually only make a couple attempts and then give up. This role of following up on leads is about persistence. It's about focus, and we're going to talk about that. And then sometimes they believe that doing this type of work as far as lead follow-up may be more tactical work, and they are trying to do something that they believe is more strategic. So here's the first best practice we want to offer to you today. And that's something that we talk about, which is the 8-touch process. Once you have a market qualified lead, what you need to institute an 8-touch process to make sure that you have spent the time rigorously to follow up with that lead and to move that lead, engage that lead and talk to that lead, and then move that lead to the next step. So one of the things that we talk about is connecting through LinkedIn, not pitching somebody, but making a connection so that you have a social connection with them. Because you want to be able to converse with your lead or your buyer through phone, through email, through social. So once we have the very second thing that we do, that's going to be a phone call to follow up. So we believe that all leads should be warm leads. They have downloaded something from you. It could be a buyer's guide. They have registered for a webinar like today's webinar. They have spent a considerable amount of time on your website, so you know who they are. and how much time they've spent there so you could score them. So these are all overt leads. So now what you're doing is you're following up based upon their interest. So the next two stages, 2 and 3, is about following up to that interest. If you don't get them at this stage, then the next 4 and 5 is about how do you solve business challenges that they're dealing with today. And the next 2 touches after that, both phone and email or LinkedIn, would be about knowledge expansion. If they said they had an issue or question in this area, how do you expand that into something broader? And then finally, if you haven't been able to reach them by the 7th attempt, the 8th one is really providing value-added solutions and expansion and keeping the door open with them. But if you have this rigorous 8-touch program with every lead, you're going to make sure that you've given them every opportunity to follow up with them. But you won't just do it based upon one message. It'll be based upon a series of touches, each with their own purpose. So that's what we call the 8-touch program. Now, this is the number one go-getter from all of you today on today's webinar, and that is you said you don't have sales resources to follow up on these leads. That's not uncommon. What we find with most companies is they just don't have dedicated sales resources to follow up on these leads, to qualify them and develop them. And this becomes even more acute when you start scaling. So a lot of times when we put in the revenue acceleration engine with a client, the salespeople love it because they don't have enough leads. They don't have anything to work on. And so now we've given them leads. But over the course of a number of months, they start saying, wow, we've got a lot of leads here. We can't get to all of them. So now you need to come up with another way to deal with that pressure point. And then finally, this whole process requires the skills. You're going to have specialized skills in this area: focus, persistence, and process. So let me offer up 3 options that we help customers and clients put in place. These leads, when they're created for you, have a short shelf life. That means you need to follow up with them within a couple of days, preferably within 24 hours. So one of our clients that we're working with we've actually created a Salesforce dashboard with them. We gave them 150 leads just recently, and we're going to track the touches and the follow-up of those leads by their sales team. And so it helps keep us on track with what needs to get done. We're not adding any additional sales expense because we're not adding headcount. We're just optimizing the follow-up on the program or campaign. Another way that we address this with our clients is we help them hire, onboard, and train business development reps, sales development reps, what have you. And these are the people that are going to be dedicated to following up on these leads. And typically, we're going to use one BDR for every 100 market qualified leads that are generated. So the objective there is to bring those folks aboard, make sure that they're in place, and make sure that they're productive. A third option that we also often provide too is to provide the outsourced service. So you have an option to hire these people and train them, but you also have an option to work with us, on-demand advisors, and we'll provide these BDRs to you on a fee basis to do the work. And we're doing that with many clients today. So let me give you an example of how we did that. One of our clients is a company called AvidXchange. Very successful company as we worked with them. When we started with them, they were $6.5 million, and 4 years later, they were $65 million. And one of the challenges that they had is that they were only generating about 38 leads per month. Yet their CEO, as we sat down with Mike Prager, he wanted to figure out how to double revenue every year going forward. So what we said is we need to help you create 300 leads per month. So what we did is we helped put in this revenue acceleration engine. We made it work. It was just tremendous, outstanding. But then that created the next problem, which is, wow, who's going to follow up on these 300 leads per month? So in this case, we provided to them three very experienced business development representatives that would actually follow up on those 300 leads per month. On average, one person for every 100 that they had, market qualified leads, and help them convert those into sales opportunities. It worked extremely well. And so, as you can see, once we put this process in place, it really got the flywheel going, because we needed to make sure that those 300 market qualified leads were converted into sales opportunities every month. And very successful, as you can tell from the growth of this company. And then what ended up happening is that the company did go public in October of 2021. So just another example of taking these best practices, putting them in place, and making them work, and ultimately getting the results that Mike was looking for. So once you have the market qualified leads and you've got a methodology on how to follow up with those leads, now the question is, how do you qualify them? So as you know, all leads are not created equal. It depends on the source and the campaigns that are being run to create the volume of leads. When we were doing this at AvidXchange, we had at least 5 different channels that we were using to create those 300 leads per month. So we had different sources, we had different channels, we had a series of campaigns. The other thing that we look at is, once we do have these market qualified leads, how are we educating them? How are we giving them the ability to self-select, like those of you that decided to come to this topic today? And then what's the criteria that you're using to qualify those leads, which is very important. So let me share with you some best practices. We like to think about keeping it simple and focused. So when you're qualifying market qualified leads, here's some criteria. Identifying the champion. Without a champion, there's nothing to be done here. So we have to have a champion, and that may be the person that you're working with on the lead, and maybe somebody else in the organization. We talk about the fox. The fox is the really the smart person in the organization that knows how to get things done. They know how to get a project funded. They know how to get it launched. They know how to get it approved. They know how to get it implemented. The second thing that we look at is really mining for the pains and business challenges that they have. So one of the things that we typically do when we work with our clients is put together what we call a strategic messaging document, which is all the pains and business challenges that you solve and all of the value propositions or aspirin to the headache that you provide. So when you're qualifying, you're not just qualifying and asking them a question about, what's your, Mark, tell me about your major business challenge. Now, Mark may be able to articulate the major business challenge, but there may be 4 more that Mark knows about, but you're going to have to surface those in the discussion for Mark. The next area of qualification is ROI and business benefit. A lot of times the reason why opportunities never close is because the justification just is not there. It's not compelling enough. It's not measurable. It's not ROI based. So one of the things that we look at is developing the business case as part of this process of qualification and making sure not only is the money there, but the associated ROI is there too. In this qualification process, it's important to socialize to the team. So when we look at an enterprise account, a lot of times when you're selling to that account, there's not just one person. There may be 5 people, 10 people involved in the process, 20 people. So it's important to be able to socialize the information that you're putting together with the team so that everybody is bought into the process. And then finally, how do you prove this out? So if you're doing all of these things in the lead conversion process, the qualification process here, the next stage, next month, we're going to talk about is executing the sales cycle. And there's something called the engagement letter that we talk about between you and your sponsor or champion, which is really important to put in place. So that's about qualification, some qualification best practices. By the way, we can go deep and spend time with you in any of those areas, but it gives you kind of a roadmap. This next area is the area that I think is probably most overlooked, and that is developing the lead. So you've got somebody that's interested, which is fantastic. The question isn't that they're interested. The question is, how do you equip them for success? How do you give them all the tools that they're going to need so that they can partner with you, become a customer, and realize the benefits that you're going to provide to their challenge? So as I said earlier, you would start with the premise that everyone should be your customer. And you know that this lead development process is going to take some time, and you're going to have to help work with them to address the missing areas that you have in the qualification process. So let's talk about some best practices that you can put in place today. Number one is your champion or sponsor. They need your help. So once you find a champion or sponsor, you need to equip that person with everything that they need. To me, it's like getting dressed in the morning. Each article that you put on, each garment, whatever that you have, is part of this. To get ready for the day, you've got to put everything together. So part of this is connecting them with their business challenges and identifying those. It's also ensuring that they've got what they need in terms of the fit with their needs, the organization, the criteria. Sometimes people don't have buying criteria for what they're looking for. They have a need, but they're not sure how to buy it. You're going to help them put together the business justification and analysis. And we're going to give you some examples on how we help people do that right now after these slides. Providing the tools to socialize your solution with and service with influencers and decision makers is important. And then providing them with evaluation plan or criteria. And so we call that the buyer's guide, by the way. And then finally, the success plan or the ROI blueprint, as we call it. If you can provide that to your champion, they're going to have a roadmap, not only in terms of evaluation, but how you're going to help them implement that service, activate that service or solution, and achieve success. So let me give you some examples. When you're thinking about working with your champion and you're thinking about developing in the development phase here, you're thinking about what should their criteria be? A lot of times people have the interest, but they're not really sure what are the major criteria that they should be using. That's why we help you develop a buyer's guide. A buyer's guide, for instance, one of our clients is Visibility Software. They provide talent management solutions. So we created a buyer's guide for them and with them to help their customers look at what are the key things that they are important to buying a solution and service like this. The next thing we looked at is, since this is going to be used in helping companies recruit, is where's the ROI? How do you achieve better outcomes? So we created an ROI guide for them that also helps, again, their customer think through how they're going to be able to cost justify this. Another great area is customer success. Having enough really bona fide, measurable customer success stories where you help your customer achieve ROI is really important. And what everybody asks for at some point in the sales process is give me 1 or 3 references that are just like me. So having customer success stories is really important. And then finally, we talked about another area, which is socialization. How do you work beyond your sponsor and socialize your solution across the team? Well, these type of videos that we've created for Visibility Software really allows us to do that. Now, one of the things that we've talked about, and we'll spend more time on this again next month, is using a tool like OneSource. OneSource takes all of the sales tools, all of the marketing offers that you have, and puts that in one place. That way, what it allows you to do is to have all of these tools, videos, ebooks, sales tools, contracts, proposals, all in one place at your fingertips. And then you can then select them based upon any number of criteria that you have here today. Now, if I'm looking at a number of different things, and I'm thinking about, I'm Dale McConnell, I want to basically say, well, how about if I want to share this information with one of our customers? So in this case, what you're looking at with something we call ShareView is the ability to actually go out and say, I want to share the success stories that we have with a nonprofit. I'm at Visibility Software. I'm Dale McConnell. And right here, we've got 5 success stories that have been built for nonprofits. So all I have to do now is say, gee, I've heard about these folks. I know about them in my space. I'm just going to see what is it that these guys have been able to do and accomplish with Visibility Software. And so right here, you've got all this information at your fingertips. It's a great way for you to not only have all of these tools available internally as you're going through this lead conversion process, but it's a great way for you to provide that to your prospects. Okay? So I just wanted to share that with you. Next thing I'd like to share with you is this notion of buyer's journey. When you think about the process that your buyer is going through or your prospect, there is a journey that they want to go through with you. And you can see right here, we've got marketing and we've got sales. Another one of our clients is a company called Kavinci. And we work with them to map out the buyer's journey that they have when they're selling their financial management solution to different verticals, different industries. In this case, it's the franchise market. So the first step is awareness and really doing all of the campaigns to get that first funnel going, with a focus on what are the business challenges and how do you solve those challenges. Then what we're doing is we're moving now into the lead conversion process, which is the qualification. How do we qualify those opportunities? How do we do the lead development that we talked about today? And then what we're going to be talking about is in the sales area, how do we actually provide the proof, convert the action, and close? So each step of this process, of this buyer's journey, which is your sales cycle, by the way, is going to be equipped with the right tools, the right knowledge, the right best practices to move every one of these buyers or prospects through this entire journey. And they do it with velocity, by the way. So that's really the conversion process that we talked about, which is creating the market qualified leads, doing that in a mathematical formula to get enough MQLs that you need each and every month, and then having the resources, internal or external, to reach out and qualify those folks, contact them, engage them, ask questions. And then if they're ready to move into the sales process because of your criteria, that's great. Then you move them into the sales opportunity process. If they're not, you're going to develop them. You're going to give your champion the tools, the technology, the best practices, and the knowledge to become a sales opportunity for your company. And that's the lead conversion process that we wanted to talk about today. So what I'd like to do right now is just open up the floor, and if you could, go ahead and post your questions that you have. I want to make sure we have time for questions to address as many questions as you have today. So go ahead and post those, and I'll make sure that we can address some of these as we have time today. Okay, here's the first one. This is from John. John says, should lead follow-up be in marketing or sales? It's a good question, John. What I find is I've seen this in this group that does lead qualification, lead follow-up in both marketing and sales. Naturally, I think it's probably better aligned in sales, but nonetheless, that's where I typically see this team. We can call them BDRs, SDRs, or lead qualifiers. These are the folks that are typically in this area. So good question. And like I said, we've seen it both ways. Okay, this next question is from Martha. How do I get my sales reps to focus on lead follow-up? It's an interesting question because, as we talked about, one of the challenges that many sales organizations have is that your sales reps are typically focused on what's going to give them money, give them compensation, which is typically closing an opportunity as opposed to lead qualification or lead follow-up. So it requires some balance, but more than that, it requires accountability. So what we're doing with another one of our clients is we're putting in that accountability model into Salesforce. So when we do have a campaign, when we do have leads, we can see what's being followed up on. And that gives us the visibility that we need. Otherwise, what ends up happening is these leads come over, they go into your CRM system, and they don't get any level of attention. Okay, next question. What lead conversion tools do you recommend? And this is from Jim. I'm not sure what you were thinking about as lead conversion tools, but we do believe that every company should have a marketing automation system and a CRM system, and that's what we put in with best practices. So you basically want to be in a position where you've streamlined that process. We talked about the buyer's journey, and one of the things we do is we help put that solution in place, optimize it for the group that you have today, and make sure that it's streamlined as far as the process. In addition, we always put in something like OneSource so that your lead qualifiers, BDRs, SDRs, whoever it is, has all of the information that they need readily at hand that they need to engage and share with prospects and customers. Let's have time for one more question if we could. And this one is from Jeremy. Jeremy says, what is the best way to sell value or ROI? That's a good question, Jeremy. It's one thing that we often do when we work with our clients, which is, are you selling tactically or strategically? In many cases, when we work with somebody that has a service or has a software solution or a solution, a lot of the messaging at the get-go is focused on that service or that solution. It may be focused on maybe some of the benefits. But what we always do is we always help our client elevate the importance of that solution to the audience. So we do that in a couple ways. One is we get all of the information down today in terms of the challenges that you solve and the value propositions that you offer. And then we look at moving that up and looking at what is it that you really optimize for that company. It could be a business process that is strategic for them. We look at areas where you can have outcomes or ROI that you can help that company drive, and then how to quantify that. That's how you can really start driving value for your clients. So that's a great question in terms of looking at that. I've got time for perhaps one more question. Let's see if we have one more question. This one is from Raj. Raj says, are there key metrics in this area? There surely is. And in fact, one of the things that we do when we put in this function within companies or help companies think about this is really look at what are the key metrics that you're going to look at. So how many leads per month do you need? How do the leads get touched in that 8-touch model? And what type of success are you having in terms of converting those leads? And then we look at, from another metric perspective, is what can we do to improve the metrics? So it's not only having a set of metrics, if you will, a dashboard on how you're doing, but also having the ability to change or make those metrics improved over time. Okay. So great questions for the audience, and thank you very much for those questions. I really appreciate that. What I'd like to do at this time is also invite you for our next webinar that we have coming up. It's this 3-part series. So on August 24th, we're going to talk about the top sales challenges that you may have for revenue growth. So we've covered marketing, we covered lead conversion, the next area is going to be sales. So we want to complete the whole process for you. So here's some typical challenges that you have. You're not getting consistent sales performance across your team. Your sales cycles are too long. You basically find perhaps that you don't have a winning strategy, you have a competing strategy today, given the competitive landscape. And some of these that we can look at, you can relate to them. So your sales team needs to be equipped for success, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So from today's webinar, first of all, we want to thank you for joining us. A next step could be that one or more of these areas that we talked about as far as lead conversion resonated with you. I'm going to send you all an email and follow up and send you the recording for today's webinar. And please get back to me and let me know if you'd like to set up a time and when. And we'll talk about a specific challenge that you'd like to address. So we can brainstorm with you on that, and we can talk about how do you create a plan for your success. So it's all about your success today. It's all about having best practices, and it's all about revenue growth. So on behalf of myself, Craig Remy, and our entire team that we have at On Demand Advisors, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I wish you great success and look forward to engaging with you today.